So today we're going to talk about the communication process. And in the little mini lectures that I've adopted, I wanted to sort of break this down into two parts. So we'll have a part one about the communication process and then a part two. This is part one. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what I call common ground. If you read your book, it talks about this idea that there are certain values, beliefs, experiences. I like to call it the field of experience. And what I mean by that is the idea that our background, where we come from, where we were raised, who our parents were, who our family is, all of those things create an identity for each person. And so the way that we communicate is we find other people with similar backgrounds. Now, some of us are much more similar to each other than others are. So, for example, my common ground would be white Anglo-Saxon Protestants over 65. I mean, that would be my wheelhouse in terms of people that are just like me. Well, you're not going to meet that many people teaching college or high school as I have done over the past 45 years. So I need to learn how to relate to people that are not in my group. And so common ground is sort of like a Venn diagram that overlaps. And that degree of connection, that degree of similarity between the two things is what makes communication possible. There are some terms here that we need to talk about. Encoding and decoding. These are opposite processes. Encoding is where I come up with what I'm going to say. I'm confronted with a situation, and in my mind, based on those common experiences, that field, your background, you make a choice about how you're going to approach that situation, what words you're going to use, what gestures you're going to use, all of those things. And as you watch me, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm encoding. I'm coming up with that. So then there's decoding. And decoding simply means interpreting what you just heard. So when you look at the video, you'll interpret, you'll say, what did Mr. Willis mean when he said this or said that? And that's what decoding is. So they're actually opposites. And so that degree of similarity, that degree of common ground is super important here. Then we have sources and receivers. This is really simple. A source is somebody who sends a message. So that's everybody. We all send a message. In public speaking, for example, you may be in an audience and I might be talking to that audience, but that audience is still sending me messages. They're just a different kind of messages, which we'll talk about in a minute. So keep that simple. Then a receiver is somebody who gets a message. And we're all constantly sources and receivers simultaneously. And our brain is able to make that work, and it makes it very powerful because then we can do multiple things at the same time. Well, let's talk about what a message is. A message is a series of symbols. And what people do is they say, okay, well, here's a series of words I'm going to say. Say you get in trouble at school. You go to the principal's office and the principal says, Joe, why did you do that? And so then I come up with my story, right? I encode a message. I probably say, oh, it was Johnny's fault. He got me in trouble. Or, whatever my story is. And so while I'm doing that, maybe I act really humble. And so I have a non-verbal message, that I'm really sorry and I'm humble and I was just led into, bad acts by somebody who I shouldn't have followed. I try to play that off. Now, I know none of you have done that. But the idea here is pretty simple. We make those, or at least we should make those decisions. What a lot of people do is they don't make a decision. They just say the first thing that comes to their mind. And that can be really dangerous. So in part two, we're going to talk about how do you go about figuring out what's the best thing to say in a particular public speaking moment. Thanks, guys.